Discussing Russian history before a certain point is a little challenging. Not much is known from other than a document called the Primary Chronicle, written in 1113, so take that into consideration. Our story starts off in Eastern Europe in the 9th century. Here lived a people called the Varangians, but we would be more prone to call them Vikings. Within these people lived a group called the Rus. The Rus ruled over 4 separate tribes of the region. One day animosity led revolt, and no longer were the tribes under the control of the Rus. With no governing system, they fell to anarchy, and war broke out amongst themselves. Desiring leadership once more, they sought out the Rus to return, and of course, they agreed. From the Rus, 3 separate brothers were selected to rule 3 separate regions. 2 of the brothers eventually died, leaving only one to lead all the tribes under himself. His name would be Rurik. This would be the start of definitive governing that would eventually lead into modern Russia. Over time, Rurik passed away, leaving a successor, Oleg of Novgorod. In an act of aggression, Oleg killed his brother Askold, who controlled the close-by settlement of Kiev. Claiming the city for his own, he decided to create a more official governing state, Kievan Rus, and Kiev would be its capital. From this point, we know a bit more of what was going on. Kievan Rus maintained its status without much change for about a century, until its ruler, Vladimir the Great, became baptized in 988. This event would transform what would become Russia, and define much of Russian culture for the foreseeable future. Going along with this change, written law finally came to Kievan Rus, replacing the old ways of the Vikings. Society had begun to advance, and a basic Russian culture seemed to be forming. And then, the Mongols attacked. In 1240, the Mongol threat had reached Kievan Rus. They invaded the south with ease, claiming it for their own. This would become the Golden Horde. To the north, well, they weren't entirely safe either, but the Mongols didn't manage to quite take such strong control of the region due to natural landscape. Either way, all areas of what was once Kievan Rus paid tribute to their Mongol leaders, but the large landmass made installing authority over the region quite impossible for the Mongols. Different leaders would pay the Mongols while maintaining a good deal of self-regulation. One of these principalities was Vladimir Sudal, located in the north. Within this was a seemingly unimportant trading post, of which a new leader had arrived. His name was Daniel I, and the post was Moscow. Daniel had more ambitious goals than just leading Moscow. He began to conquer local lands for himself, much to the dismay of others within that principality. By this point, he had created a state within a state within a state, of which was called Muscovy. Over centuries, Muscovy grew, while the Golden Horde weakened. By 1357, the Khan of the Golden Horde was assassinated, and a power vacuum opened. Many fought for control, and their overall power began to drain. Of course, by this point, Muscovy had a new leader, that of Dmitry Donsky. He began to challenge the Mongol rule, but it wasn't a full-out rebellion per se. Maybe the occasional battle between Muscovy and the Mongols, but it was enough that the cracks were beginning to show. Eventually, the leaders who had fought Muscovy were replaced, and the two states had seemed to work out their differences, but the damage could not be undone. After about a century, Muscovy gained another influential leader, Ivan III. Ivan III's influence would be felt for generations, as he made it clear Muscovy desired more. Seeking grand expansion to the borders, he annexed the local principality Novgorod in 1478. Unification of Russia was accelerating. At the same time, the Golden Horde was falling into disarray. It was being broken up into less powerful khanates, and in 1480 it was apparent Ivan was not willing to go under Khan rule any longer. The Golden Horde attempted to challenge Ivan, but by this point the Mongols were too weak, and Muscovy could defend itself. Finally, they were free of the Mongol rule. Under its own control, Muscovy grew along with its influence and power. Successors of Ivan III followed his mindset, and the area of Muscovy began to multiply. Now, by the time the throne had reached Ivan III's grandson, Muscovy was quite far from its trading post roots. Ivan IV was taking over, and during his reign, he became the true ruler of the Russian states. Combining them into one, he created a singular Russian state, the Tsardom of Russia, named for the Rus people. With this new state, Ivan IV still sought more power, and numerous wars would occur during his reign. This drained Russia's resources and its manpower. Eventually, economic crisis was on the horizon. Ivan IV would become known as Ivan the Terrible. Although the name is likely poorly translated from its original meaning, that's not to say he was not necessarily terrible. He did end up killing his son, who happened to be heir to the throne during a disagreement. This would ultimately be a tragic error for the whole of Russia, as who did end up taking over the throne was Ivan's less than capable son, Fyodor I. Now, some claim he had legitimate mental issues, others believe he just had no motivation to work in politics, but either way, he spent his day elsewhere, while his brother-in-law ruled all of Russia. Ivan IV's wars had cost Russia dearly, with economic stability beginning to falter. The worst had not come yet, though. You see, Fyodor had no children, nobody to inherit the throne. So after the previous leader died, nobody was the Tsar. What resulted was various imposters claiming to be a child of Ivan IV, but without a leader, Russia was weak in the upcoming conflict. Poland sought to back one of the imposters and sent citizens to help him gain control. Of course, this fake Tsar was killed along with thousands of Polish supporters. Quite unhappy with the events that had transpired, Poland began to invade. Sweden, rivals of Poland, sided with Russia in this, and drawn-out war led to occupation, but Russia and Sweden prevailed, and eventually Poland left. Hooray! But this is not quite the end. Sweden had just got a new king, and the new ruler was no longer content with just helping Russia out, even with compensation promised. He wanted Russia, and another war ensued. Needing some legitimate ruler, a grand council assembled, and the person they chose had important family and a czar advising grandfather and whatnot. His age was a bit of a concern for some, himself included. He was 16, and his name was Mikhail Romanov. Next time we'll cover the Romanov dynasty along with the fall of the Tsardom. This is Tyler of Knowledge Hub.